Hey everybody, in this video I interview Liz Parrish, who's the CEO of a gene therapy company. Now with gene therapy, you could change your genetics or your genes and change your life. For example, you could use gene therapy to build bigger muscles without working out, to fight diseases, as well as to reverse aging. Stay tuned. Hello, everybody. Today, my guest is Liz Parrish, and Liz is a humanitarian, entrepreneur, innovator, and a leading voice for genetic cures. As a strong proponent of progress and education for the advancement of regenerative medicine modalities, she serves as a motivational speaker to the public at large for the life sciences. She's actively involved in international educational media outreach and is a founding member of the International Longevity Alliance. Liz, thank you so much for being on the Anti Aging Hacks podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So, you have a very interesting background. Let's start with your education and what you did after college.
Yeah, so when I was going to school, I was going to school for biology at the University of Washington. I did not finish my degree. I'm one of those people. My husband had worked for Adobe for about 10 years and decided to spin off into his own software companies. And I assisted with that. I raised two children during that time. And I always stayed really close to what was happening in biology. I was always very interested. And from 2010 to 2013, I worked with a nonprofit for the education of the use of stem cells.
Hmm.
So this was my introduction to regenerative medicine, which was really fascinating. And I was very excited about that. And we did a myriad of different processes that would help to try to help people understand what stem cells were, why stem cells lost funding for embryonic research, and that most use of stem cells was not embryonic based. And also helping people understand what an embryo is, that it's not a differentiated cell that is a fetus. A lot of people just didn't understand that basic information. But when my son was diagnosed in 2013 with type 1 diabetes, I was thrown into the world of understanding of how frail the human body really is. And while I was in the hospital with him, after 3 years of my education in regenerative medicine, I had a lot of questions. And my questions were based in why these modalities that I had been looking at were not available for kids. And they essentially, it was very uncomfortable every time we met with a doctor, and they would say, those are experimental medicines. We don't use those in humans. You should be happy your son has a treatable disease. There are kids that are dying here.
Wow.
And I just, it never fit into my head. It still doesn't fit into my head. And I'm sure for all of those people who told me that, it was probably made perfect sense to them, and it made no sense to me. Why do we let people die without trying new technology? And remember, some of the technology that we're using and that I used in my own body had been around for decades. It wasn't brand new. And anyway, yeah, that really was the beginning of the change. And then I started traveling, trying to find conferences that were more based in genetics, because I felt that the reason that the stem cell had so much power was really the genetics behind the stem cell. And so I assumed that the cure for disease must lie in those genes, the susceptibility and the cure. And so I ended up at a SENS conference, Aubrey de Grey's SENS conference in the UK. And I went there because there were a lot of people speaking about genetics. George Church from Harvard was there, and other people who were talking about aging, which wasn't really related to what I was looking for. I was looking for cures for kids at that point and how to get kids access to those cures. And it was a several day event, and I think probably day two, the light went on. We have over 100,000 people that die every day that could be candidates to take these type of therapeutics to see if we can then expedite cures for kids. And it appeared from everyone that I talked to that came off the stage that the treatments that they were looking at to treat biological aging, almost every single one of them treated a childhood disease as well. So that was kind of the epiphany moment, and I said, "Great, what do you need?"
Mhm.
We'll solve this in short order. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people step into the industry and they think, "Oh, well, this is obviously we're there and we're done."
Mhm.
And they said, "We just need funding." So I went home and I started a company called Biotrove Investments, and with that, I started a podcast.
Mhm.
And those podcasts might still be on iTunes. I did several. I did one with George Church and Aubrey and various people in the longevity area, because I found that what was missing when I would call investors and talk to people who I thought would actually back this technology quite easily, because it was such a great idea,
Mhm.
that they just didn't understand what the technology was. So I put together an educational platform for it. And then I started flying around and meeting some pretty high net worth people who could really change the world with their money. And almost across the board, every one of them said, "If you could prove it works, I will fund it."
Wow.
And there was the beginning of Bioviva.
That's amazing. So your husband started his company that maybe imbibed the entrepreneurial spirit in you. You went to a conference, the Sense conference with Aubrey Gray, and you met quite, I'm sure, quite a lot of the luminaries in the anti-aging space. And you had an idea at that point to, by way of helping your child to start to cure the diseases of aging. And you came back and you formed a company. This seems like it's very well scripted in a short time. How did you do all this in such a short time?
Well, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was 2013. So, Bioviva wasn't incorporated until January of 2015. So there was significant amount of time in between that conference in 2013. I mean, for me, nothing happens fast enough. So, I mean, if you want to talk to me about disappointment, it's the amount of time that it takes to do anything. If
Mhm.
I have an idea, I just want it done.
Right.
And there's a lot of hoops and hurdles that you have to go through to actually get it done. So during those 2 years, I met Bill Andrews from Sierra Sciences and got really turned on to lengthening telomeres. I put together the what would eventually be Bioviva. I found a medical doctor who was doing amazing things with gene therapy and had a humanitarian spirit. And I said, "I want to start a company with you." I had to. I mean, I did the whole podcast series and did the company and collected business plans and was talking to a lot of people. So I was actually looking at the technology quite in depth at that point.
Mhm.
And that was the point where I was saying, there was a lot of things I looked at, and let's just say 2 out of 10 things that I looked at, I said I would take those. I would take those to prove this works. The other 8, no.
Mhm. So I'm glad that one of our common friends, Dr. Bill Andrews, he's also done a wealth of work in telomeres and telomerase. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he was kind enough to make the introduction to you, which I'm glad you did. So now that you've come, let's say 2015, it's 4 years after you formed the company. What is your big why, Liz? Why are you doing this now?
We're going to change everything. We are going to create the human for the future, the human that is most impervious to disease, and eventually the human that has the physical enhancements and attributes that it needs to feel full, to feel whole, to feel capable, to feel like it's living an unlimited life.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean,
Some, yeah, okay. Some people tell me that they don't want to reverse their aging. They want to age gracefully. And I respect their viewpoint completely, to be honest. I do know, however, that aging brings about the diseases of aging, and there's a multitude of them. For example, my dad has type 2 diabetes, and there's nothing beautiful about that disease or graceful about it. And I'm sure he wishes he could turn it back. So and then also we get cognitive ability decline and our muscle mass decline, so we fall and fracture our bones. What is your answer to people that say, I just want to age gracefully?
I mean, it's really difficult because the thing is I want people to feel good about themselves. If there is a cure for biological aging and you want to age and die of the diseases of aging, I believe in autonomy and agency to do with your body whatever you want to. I think that it's really important to feel good about yourself and to enjoy all the processes of your life. But there is no such thing as healthy aging. So all of the signs that you see as you age, whether you like them or not, are not signs of health. They're signs of the opposite. They are the deterioration, the cellular degeneration over time. So, in the future, I would like to see humans uh, who don't have the signs of biological aging but feel just as good about the aging process. I mean, I think in the future it'll be very much flipped upside down. Having more years under your belt is actually will be exceptional. It will be more likely that you're the unicorn that we spoke of before we got on the call, which is the person who has not just done one job in their life but has done a multitude of jobs and therefore has a better understanding of a wider variety of subjects and able to solve bigger problems. With cognitive decline right now, that just vastly doesn't happen. We have the detriment of the inability to think as quickly and have as much ability to learn new subjects faster as we grow older. And so we want to get rid of that detriment and create, a more unlimited aspect of mental cognitive ability, just as one instance of what we will be able to do with genetics.
No, that's great. And just a little bit of a segue, what we talked about earlier is this concept, as you mentioned, of a human doing multiple jobs or having multiple skill sets. And there's a very famous author, his name is Yuval Noah Harari, that wrote the book Sapiens. And I listened to one interview with him where he's talking about the advent of AI and how in the next few years it's going to come in and start to do more of our day-to-day jobs. And therefore humanity is going to have to rethink what is what they do in terms of their career in some ways. And so it is actually beneficial for humans to be able to learn new tricks and new skills so they can go do into careers which now are more, there's more money involved basically. But let's
Yeah,
unless you want to
I
comment.
love his books. I love both of his
Mhm.
books. I liked *Sapiens* the best out of the two,
Yeah.
but I definitely like both of his books. He's an amazing writer, and that's true. We do have whenever you look at a societal change and people say, oh, but everyone will have to retrain if we get rid of this, earth destroying process. Well, that's what we do really well is we retrain. You can't feel sorry for humans. If they have the ability and we have the ability to finance them, especially to make those sort of changes, those changes are quite necessary and should be made.
Mhm.
That is the beauty of our species.
Yep, agreed. So let's get into what is gene therapy. When people think about gene therapy, I think half the time they're just not sure. The other time they might be afraid of what are you going to do? And so, just for the listeners, what is simply gene therapy, Liz?
Gene therapy is, you can think of it as a natural process. It definitely happens in the environment. It happens to you almost every year when you get a virus. But when you get a virus, a gene, a viral vector goes into your body and tries to insert its genes so that they can replicate. I am so sorry. There's a cat in here. I did
There
not
is.
know a cat got shut in here. And hi, Lyra. Um, and but when we do gene therapy, when we're actually guiding gene therapy, we often also use a viral vector, but one that doesn't have the ability to get you sick. It can't replicate. It's called an attenuated virus. And what it has put into it is a therapeutic gene. So a gene that will create some sort of benefit in your body. And that's what we're looking to do is take a beneficial gene, throw it into a virus that can't get you sick, and actually deliver it to cells. And there are several different ways to do it. You can try to integrate into the genome of humans, but what we do is we create what's called an episome. We create a little piece of DNA that sits outside of your chromosome and doesn't affect the way your natural genes function.
Okay.
And
And
what genes
uh,
do is they create proteins, and those proteins change you. So basically, you are the proteins that your genes create. That's every way that we present in both sickness and health and in our visual appearance. So when we upregulate a protein that's a regenerative protein, what we're looking to do is make a cell behave more youthfully with that protein upregulation. We might be trying to create more muscle mass or lengthen telomeres or create proteins that protect you from cardiovascular disease and kidney disease or create a better cognitive function. And so those are basically just in the proteins that the genes create.
gotcha. And so we're sending a virus into the body, and you said this is the weak virus, so it can't really hurt us. It
Mhm.
also can't replicate, which means that for the areas of the body we're targeting, we've got to have just enough of the virus so it can attach to those cells and deliver the payload, which is the protein. The protein goes inside the cell, then gets into the nucleus, and it hangs out there, not inside the DNA, but beside the DNA. And
Yeah,
uh-huh. Okay. And then it's able to create the proteins that we need. And the proteins are the basic building blocks that do basically everything in our bodies. So we can then turn on some of the beneficial effects of these good proteins that we're injecting.
that's
How
right.
long, how long does it take for us to measure the impact of this gene therapy for some of the use cases that you mentioned?
Yeah, so measuring the amount of protein is one thing. So some gene therapies, some genes actually share protein into the blood, and you can measure it through the blood. Other gene therapies are a little bit more difficult, like telomerase induction. It doesn't share the protein into the blood; it gets dissolved immediately. So how we measure it is we measure it by measuring the length of the telomeres, and when what the full effect of a gene therapy will be over time will change. So when you're measuring telomerase in cells, you would measure the length of the telomeres, right? Essentially, that would be the best outcome because we're looking to make enough telomerase to lengthen the ends of the telomeres. When you're looking at a myostatin inhibitor, you could measure it in the blood, but you can also measure it by the amount of muscle mass that is increased. So there's different types of ways to measure an outcome of a gene therapy.
Okay, so for those two use cases you just mentioned,
Mhm.
I've heard that you've been a personal guinea pig and you've done both of those on yourself, both the telomerase inducer as well as the myostatin, which increases muscle density and size, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
So I did both of those gene therapies, and then I'm hoping to try Clotho soon, later this year. I think that it is also a protein that it will be very beneficial to the future of humans.
Okay, what were your results out of those two gene therapies that you did?
Okay, so the results, actually, I have some new blood work right next to me. I just brought home from the doctor yesterday. But what we saw consistently is reduced level of triglycerides, which should mean better heart health. We saw reduced blood glucose levels, and we consistently see those. We saw really low C-reactive proteins. I think this test they showed at zero point 0.3. And C-reactive proteins are related to your inflammatory markers, so that means really low inflammation for me. We saw increased length in telomeres. We've done 4 telomere tests since I did the therapy. Well, no, 1 was before, so 3 since I did the therapy, and they're all progressively longer. Um, Not like hugely longer. I would have liked to see bigger jumps, but about 33 years improvement in the telomere length of my T lymphocytes.
Wow.
Then we saw increased muscle mass and decrease white fat in my MRI images. And I'm awaiting my last MRI images now.
Okay.
And that was
And
going from exercising to not exercising. That was really cool. Right now, we're doing a new delivery method for gene therapy at Rutgers, and already in our mouse study and this is a longevity mouse study, people, so no animals are killed early. Actually, we try to help them live longer with the gene therapies,
Yeah.
because I don't, everyone knows I don't like animal studies and I don't like how they relate to humans, but this is a new development of a new delivery method that can carry multiple genes. And so with this one, it's important that we have to go back and do the very preliminary research work. And our mice that have the follistatin gene, the one for the myostatin inhibitor, are already heavier in weight than the other mice just in a matter of a couple of weeks. And so
Wow.
we assume that that's muscle mass.
Mhm. And how long do you expect both of these therapies that you did and others that are being produced to last?
That is a really good question. So, all of the gene therapies that have passed through the regulatory bodies are considered a one time treatment for a lifetime cure. Whether that's true or not, we actually don't know. So, to make that as simple as possible, they should probably last at least 10 years. But I think that through human evidence, we'll find out. And that's why they're considered a one-time treatment for a lifetime of the patient. But then again, if we extend lifespan massively and they eventually the cells divide over and they get lost, then they wouldn't be there. So I would say that that's vastly an unknown in the gene therapy realm.
Mhm.
uh, and it depends on whether you integrated the gene into the chromosome or not.
I see. So once the gene gets in the chromosome, then the assumption is that and when the cell divides, it takes that copy with the gene, and
Yeah,
therefore,
but I think with zinc fingers, they didn't really find that happening, the early gene editing technology. And so in many cases, the gene was thrown out. So that's why we'll have to see. We'll have to see if CRISPR is a more permanent solution
Mhm.
to editing. It looks like it may in fact be. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we'll have to see over time. So I would hate to be pinned down on that and then in 20 years be wrong.
Sure. Um, could you describe CRISPR now that you brought it up? How is that different from gene therapy?
Well, actually, CRISPR is delivered in the same way that other gene therapies are delivered. It's generally delivered with AAV, which is a viral vector that we use to deliver gene therapies today because it has a very low immune response. It basically has kicked out all of the problems that they used to have with gene therapy.
Hmm.
So they had a couple bad outcomes with gene therapy in the past. One was integrational mutagenesis, where the gene integrates into the wrong part of a chromosome and it can cause cancer. That is no longer. And the other case was one person died of an immune reaction to an old vector called adenovirus. This AAV is not adenovirus, it's adeno-associated virus, but it's a different virus. I know it sounds similar. And we don't have that problem anymore either. So a lot of the bad things about early gene therapy have already been taken care of, and now we deliver gene therapy mostly with AAV. Although we're looking at a different delivery method now that has just a low immunogenicity, but can actually deliver higher payloads. So CRISPR is actually delivered with a viral vector as well, and but it is actually an editing. Uh, uh, think of it as an editing mechanism, and it can go in and quite simply go and find in the genome where it's been coded to look and cut out a gene, which would be great for things like Huntington's disease. This is something that you can't just fix by putting in a therapeutic gene. And then it can also cut out and replace gene sequences with a gene of choice, which is also really fantastic. But my biggest interest in it right now is just turning on and off genes. So for instance, in your chromosome, you have a gene that is H-TERT, the one that turns on telomerase. And we're just going to use this as a for instance, because it's just one of the gene candidates we might want to look at. And instead of inserting with gene therapy a therapeutic gene like we do today, although I think today that's the most efficient, we might be able to go in and take the repressor off of the actual gene that you naturally have and just turn on the gene that you have.
Mhm.
Um, Everyone knows that, like, I don't particularly like small molecule approaches to turning on genes, doing things like regulating telomerase, because if you're going to turn on HTERT with something that you eat, you're going to turn on other genes too. It's very unlikely that you're just turning on one gene. And there's not a lot of great ways to test for how many other genes are being affected.
Mhm.
So with the idea of CRISPR going in and just taking the repressor off, you would just be pinpointing the exact genes that you want to turn on in the human chromosome, and doing it that way. So that could be very beautiful.
Yeah, what is the Chinese scientist just made news with CRISPR a few months ago where he edited a couple of twins to
Mhm.
not be susceptible to HIV.
Yeah,
And that led to a huge outcry. But people are starting to talk about CRISPR being used to create designer babies, which
sure.
I don't know where that's going to go, right? Let's talk about your company, Bioviva. Are you helping bring to market some of these gene editing technologies? And if so, how many of them or how are you doing it?
Right now, we are watching gene editing technology. So what we're really good at is translating things to the clinic through our partner, Integrative Health Systems, who does the gene therapies for us now. We translate to the clinic things that have a lot of research behind them, that have, sometimes decades, that basically have information that's come out of more than one lab that is not connected with the other lab, ensuring that there's more precision and reproducibility. We are not yet working with gene editing technologies. But if you watch this 10 years from now, then obviously this will be outdated.
Yep.
And we probably are. But right now, we work with the most predictable and most used technology. We think that it's always safest to use the most used technology, which is just using gene therapy to get a gene into the nucleus that sits independently, does not integrate, and just produces the therapeutic protein that we're targeting.
Okay. In terms of the population, who's the right candidate at the moment for gene therapies? Is it older people or people with very specific diseases or illnesses?
Well, I mean, lots of candidates for gene therapy. But yeah, specifically an aging population who, many of the people who go through integrative health systems have no other option. They're at the end of the road of options for their specific disease state. Um, we do believe in agency and autonomy of people to participate, but they have to participate by consent and understand fully what they're participating in. But vastly, we're looking at treating the diseases of aging, and therefore the candidates that come through vastly have already a diagnosis, and then we are trying to use regenerative gene therapy to see what the outcome will be. And then Bioviva is a bioinformatics company, and November 2019, we should be launching our multi-omic repository. So you'll be able to, especially the biohacker community, we want to get them super involved, because if you're not going through a medical doctor, you're doing something at home, let's streamline what you're doing and actually understand outcomes better.
Hmm.
But this multi-omics repository will be a place that people, by subscription, a low-cost subscription, can put their multi-omic data. And if they choose to, because it's GDPR compliant, they can share that data with us to help solve the problem of biological aging. And it's HIPAA compliant, and it's going to be powered by Google. So it's going to be, I think, really quite extraordinary to help our researchers on our side start to create the correlations and um, all of the differences in what this multi-omic data means, getting us a little bit closer to precision medicine. And then the same databases obviously will have patient data, nothing shared between people, but the patient data will come in and we'll start mapping. We're the first company in the world to hold the patient data on regenerative gene therapies.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
I think I think we're going to revolutionize how hopefully even pharmaceutical companies do drugs in the future with this data. So we'll be able to look at the multi-omic data that's required of the patients who go through integrative health systems, and their information is all anonymized. We don't know who they are. We don't want to know who they are. That's a separate company. We just want the information back to our company. And we will see how they perform over time. If
Great.
they are outliers in health, and of course we hope that they are.
Yeah. Looking forward to that release in November. Congratulations. Now, something I've heard you say before, Liz, is that we're spending billions and billions of dollars trying to target the symptoms of diseases,
Yeah.
like, for example, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and targeting them specifically one at a time.
Yeah.
And I think you've made the argument, and some others have as well, that it's really all a cumulative disease, or these are diseases of aging. And so, if therefore we can target aging, all of these go away. And the secondary point to that is, even if you do fix cancer in a 75, 85-year-old, the next disease is going to get them in 2 or 3 years. So it's not like you're expanding their longevity by quite a bit.
Yeah, and when you look at these diseases as separate things, what you start to do is you just are starting to make treatments for symptoms. So Alzheimer's, dementia in general, let's just bulk it into dementia, kidney failure, liver failure, cancer, and heart disease. These are all just accumulated damage of aging. And so if you're already off target if you start targeting a specific symptom. Now, it's important for people who already are suffering with these diseases to have some alleviation of symptoms, but the holy grail in cancer and heart disease and dementia is treating biological aging, stopping the processes that are happening that are accumulating the damage to begin with. You know, a lot of people that say, you know, are you trying to create, you know, a body that is like a 25-year-old body? Well, I mean, you know, that's a great image to have. And when we haven't seen the future, we have to go with images that we have right now to actually express our understanding. But a 25-year-old body is already accumulating damage, and there's already diagnoses or diagnostic kits that are coming out that will be able to detect, you know, probably your shortest line fuse of biological aging in your 20s. So, you know, we're accumulating damage, and we're having telomere attrition and everything else by the time, you know, we're very young. Well, telomere attrition by the time you're born.
Right.
So I think that what we're looking to create and what we're looking to find is a body that is substantially different from that, that essentially just repairs faster than it is degenerating. And it basically can handle all of the processes of biological aging as they're thrown at it, so
Mhm.
that there is no instance of actually having disrepair in the cell, because genomic instability leads to cancer, you know, nutrient sensing issues, or type 2 diabetes. All of these things we can't as a society afford for the accumulation of these type of damages. It literally, each one of the aging diseases is considered $1 trillion disease.
Mhm. I got you. So, for the public, in order to visualize what you're saying, would that be tantamount to saying you have a 25 or a 20-year-old body, but it just doesn't age? You stay that age forever. You look like that forever.
Yeah, we don't really know. You know, will there be some growth pathways that continue to go past then? You know, what can we do if we could halt a 20-something-year-old at their age, essentially keeping them from accumulating damage? So I do suspect that older generations will have a different appearance than when we start actually moving these type of therapeutics back to younger people and having them take them before they accumulate damage.
Mhm.
I wonder if there will be a difference in the future, like a notable difference in society for those of us who didn't get the therapeutics until later in life. Although we should have the regenerative capacity and the epigenetic outcome to present in a healthy way. We just don't know. And now we're jumping way ahead because we do. I was just asked through email, how long will it take to get these technologies to people? Because everybody's really excited about this. But right now we have to find out how these therapies work in people, and we need more than 100 people for each one of the therapies, and some people with combinatorial therapies, because it's not going to be one gene therapy that cures biological aging. I don't believe that lengthening your telomeres is going to cure every aspect of biological aging. We don't see that it targets all of the areas of the hallmarks of aging. And we're looking at other gene therapies now. We've got 4 candidates. We'll eventually put them in one therapeutic, but the list is growing. And George Church is one of our scientific advisors. And so, the list is growing with the candidates that he's seen as well. And so what we need to do, so right now a lot of people get concerned and they say, wait a minute, only certain people can afford this and they're going to live a long time. Well, actually, it's going to be probably a ways to actually solving this problem. And what people want is predictable technology that they can afford. And that's going to happen probably faster than you think, but it's not going to happen without human data. And as far as I know, we're the only company pushing that envelope to get that data now. I think that waiting for clinical trials is a bad idea, but every drug that we look at now through integrative health systems, we will bring back to clinical trials once we understand how it performs and what the endpoint is. So in drug development right now, phase 3, so if your drug gets to phase 3, there's a 94% failure rate.
Wow.
Why would any investor want to put money into that? So what we want to do is we want to flip that on its head and have a 94% success rate. And that will vastly change how fast we can get a regulatory approval, hitting our points, hitting safety, efficacy, and knowing exactly the endpoints that we're looking at instead of choosing the wrong ones and having a miracle drug that didn't meet its endpoints. We have to stop this being set up to fail. And, we'd love to do what we do offshore right here in the United States. We'd love legislation that was pushed to do that because we're doing things in the safest way possible. We're taking the best candidates and we're helping people who don't have any other options. And that's something that we should be able to do right here. We should be pushing innovation faster than ever, especially with regenerative technologies. They just don't have the problems that the old small molecules had.
Okay, I want to be cognizant of your time, Liz, and I have a couple more questions for you. How are we going to get to a 94% success rate? Are you doing that to specific cells outside the body, or this is being done on fully human bodies?
They're fully human body. It's called in vivo gene therapy. So you put it into a human body. How we're going to do that is we're going to spearhead these studies. And these studies are done in areas of the world that people can access technology by consensual use. Those studies are being analyzed by my company, Bioviva. We are studying how these drugs perform in humans, any of the negative effects, any of the positive effects, and we're just doing a wide panel. So we're not trying to pass a drug. We got a panel, and where the drug works and where the drug didn't work is going to be on that panel. Thereby understanding how a drug works, how well it works, having safety and efficacy in a study that we can then take to investors and show them when we run it through the drug through the US FDA, what exactly we're targeting and why we know we're going to be successful. And this platform is actually open. It opens up in 2020 to other companies, and we've had a lot of interest. So think about it, if you're an investor and you're interested in companies XYZ, but you're thinking about putting a couple $1 million into these companies or more, but you don't know how their drug performs. You could come to a company like Integrative Health Systems, who works with Bioviva, and actually platform your technology in humans in studies by consensual use, find out where the drug works and where it doesn't work. And your investor is going to be a lot happier because they have human data. And they don't have human data that's been cherry picked to show how awesome it is. It's just human data that shows where the drug works and where the drug doesn't work. And I think that this is really the wave of the future. We have
Mhm.
people champing at the bit, trying to get hold of this type of technology because they need this technology. They have no other options. I don't understand why we're not just doing this right here in the United States. If you've got medical doctors and you have researchers, instead, companies have to pay these extraordinarily high prices to go through the US FDA,
Mhm.
and enormous amount of begrudging paperwork in order to just do the right thing, which is to find out if a drug works in humans. We've got a lot of candidate humans who would like to participate in these type of therapeutics, and we need to get access to them. And they help spearhead the future of the technology. And that data um, ends up showing us how well these technologies actually work, thereby expediting the use of the drug through clinical trials. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Dr. Bill Andrews told me that it costs upwards of $1 million to do this in the United States. Is that why a lot of folks are going overseas?
Oh yeah, it would cost even more than that. I mean, a phase one trial in gene therapy, I mean, you would have over $1 million worth of just gene therapy that you would have to make for your first candidates, and then you have to with the FDA, it's $1 million to do business, and then you have to go through all this criteria of paperwork and different organizations that you have to. It's this is not how you innovate, and this is why other countries are innovating so quickly. So I was just reading an article about type 1 diabetes and how in several countries in the world you can get islet cells injected that are from another candidate donor, and these people are nearly off of insulin. And even in Iran, you can get this technology, but you can't get it in the US 6 years after its inception. There was another article about stem cells in Japan and how Japan now has this expedited route to get therapeutics to people. They basically do a small safety efficacy study, and for 7 years, you can have candidate persons come in and participate in those therapies, thereby cutting off the long, lengthy phase three and actually getting, actual outcomes in the average patients that might come through that haven't been cherry picked for the therapy. And there's a guy who, basically got a head injury, and he was paralyzed, and he took these stem cells, and now he's not fully functional, but he's able to walk and drive a car and all of these things due to this regenerative medicine outcome. And yet it says critics are saying that they're moving too fast, that these drugs may be unsafe. There is no safe drug out there. Please don't go to your doctor and think that you're being prescribed a safe drug. People die taking their prescriptions as prescribed. A lot of the drugs that you take today have more side effects than they do beneficial effects. And I just, I think that we have to stop living in the myth maze that, somehow the things that we are prescribed are safe, and that things that are still in the experimental phase are not safe, because the technology that we have right now is directed technology, that is the outcome from the therapeutic protein or the stem cell, let's say in the case of stem cell, or maybe an exosome type technology, is directed at a beneficial effect. We're talking about making your cells into drug companies now, essentially themselves, and creating the drug, the exact drug that you need, rather than taking a small molecule and having liver damage and kidney failure, but maybe lowering some amount of something in your blood that you're still going to die of aging.
Yeah. Liz, outside of doing fancy gene therapies and yourself, what are your top 2 or 3 anti-aging hacks or tips for the audience now?
Oh gosh. um Exercise.
Hmm.
Exercise is really good. What I'd like to tell you is I am not really good at being on any sort of prescribed sort of supplement or diet or anything else. I was just told by my doctor I have to stop eating so much chocolate. I eat 3 huge bars of chocolate a day.
No
And
way.
she said, you really shouldn't be eating that because it's a lot of sugar. So a lot of people on reduced sugar diets. I wouldn't take it out of your diet. Of course, everything has a little bit of sugar in it. Um, I don't know. I like gene therapy because I just, in the future, I think that, most people, because they're very bad at adhering to things,
Hmm.
probably just need a few injections and not have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore.
Okay.
In the gene therapy mouse model, they, even compared to the calorie restricted mice, the mouse that lived twice as long as the calorie restricted mice, which was a huge extension of lifespan, just basically had one therapeutic gene. It didn't have a specific diet or a specific exercise regime. So I think that that will be the future. I'm hoping that gene therapies will help a lot of other people like me who,
No
who,
bias there at all. But
who don't want to be on a prescribed thing or don't want to have to take a bunch of pills or whatever. But yeah, probably the most basic things is exercise. That for sure we know. I would say diet, but I don't think that anyone has ever perfected the diet. One day they say all protein, the next day they say all carbohydrates. Somebody just sent me this all carbohydrate diet. Then they say high fat, then they say low fat.
yeah, the latest craze is all carnivore, so just eat animal for.
I'm a
You know,
vegetarian, so I don't eat animals.
mhm. Liz, you don't have to answer this question, but how long do you want to live?
Whew. I just, I again, there's a lot of myths that people live by, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to live to 85 or whatever." I don't probably think at 85, if you're healthy and active, that you'll want to die. Um, I, I didn't really get into this to live a long time. I was looking for cures for kids, and I took the therapies because I felt like we needed evidence. Um, so I mean, I'm not a I don't want to become a dependent to my children. I don't want to become sickly. I don't want to not be able to run, hike, do all the things that I love. I don't want to feel physically incapable. I'm not afraid of death because that's either nothing or something. I don't think that people worry about that as much as you think. But I don't know that I haven't chosen a good day to die yet.
Okay. Where can people find you online and learn more about you?
So you can actually find us all over social media. You can find us, it's bioviva-science.com. You'll have to deal with the old website right now. We're getting a new website up in the next couple months, again, for the November launch.
Mhm.
We're really excited about that. For you to share your data to help cure, the biggest killer now in all industrialized countries and the biggest killer in the world by 2050, which is biological aging. And so, yeah, probably bioviva-science.com. And we have a few places all over social media where we're present. If you want to contact me directly through social media, probably the thing that I enjoy the most is Facebook, because my friends put their pictures up there of everything they're doing. And if they're having a baby or getting married, I have to find out through Facebook. Before I even get an invitation, it's on Facebook.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's probably, although my chat is really backed up there, so I'm not very good at responding to that. But when I post something, I always make myself available for 24 hours after I post it to answer questions or to chat with people in the chat. So that's a good place.
Okay, great. I will include a link of everything we discussed, along with a link to your website and your social channels on the show notes for this episode, which can be found at antiaginghacks.net/gene therapy. Liz, thank
Great.
you so much for coming on the show. And I would love to continue this conversation at a different time in the future.
Okay. Thanks for having